On my life on this world, living at the bottom of the river. Devil, Holy Mother.
Hello, my name is Dan the Random Man, and thank you so much for tuning into this vlog. Currently, I am trying out something new. We're going to try a little bit of at-home filming because I feel like I need to do this more often because it's going to start snowing pretty soon, and I still would like to get some content out there. So today, I figured I would tell you a little bit about my setup. But I started fishing just like everyone else started fishing with a conventional spinning rod, which I will put over here on this left to give you an idea because mine's over there and I'm not going to get up and grab it. Now I'm a bit older though, so it's definitely been a good 15, 17 years, something like that I have been fishing. Usually what I'm used to fishing is for bass, which I usually do with a bait caster, Shimano Curado DC, the cat daddy of bait casters. Man, this thing makes a cool noise. It has an automated drag braking system. I mean, come on. What the heck else are you going to spin your bite and check on? Other than a nice, crispy Desert Eagle. If you haven't spin it on that or this, I don't know what you did with it, but this was clearly the answer. I'm sure a lot of people actually needed the Biden check, to be honest with you. That's not very nice, I'm sorry. Anyways, this is a bait caster. You put a lure on the end of it, and you whip it out there, and you reel it back in. That's bass fishing. I mean, throw a worm on, feel the, wait for the bite, jerk bait, wait for the strike, set the hook, lean back. So, after a long time of doing that, I moved to a different place where I am now honestly 100% a fly fisherman. I don't think I fished for bass one time in the last 3 months, which is really weird. But it's just because I have to drive a long ways to do it, and I live in some of the most beautiful river country you probably could on the face of this earth. Moving on. Fly fishing. What is fly fishing? Is it just like grabbing flies out of the air and throwing them in the water? Is it maybe attaching up to that fly? Like that one that just flew by my head a second ago. I wonder if that was on film. That's funny if it was. Fly fishing. No. Fly fishing is this whole dang other realm of weirdness. You got this reel that you pull line out of most of the time instead of casting it out. You whip your line back and forth, which I'm going to clip up, and you retrieve usually by stripping your line in. The only thing the reel is used for, if you have a nice fish on and you're having a hard time fighting it, you can adjust this nice drag system over here and give the fish a little bit of a tiring out fight. That way eventually you can pull him into your net. And as the key name hints, we use flies, these little furry things of hair. I mean, there is a billion different kinds of flies that you can possibly pick from. Like right now on this current rod, I have 2 flies tied on. I have I don't know if you can see that, but I have a hopper and I have a little furry nymph, kind of. It's almost like a streamer, but it's more of a nymph. We'll get to that. Be patient. So, I'll tell you more about the fly rod in a second. Let's go over some basic tools. What you need to fly fish. You need a fly rod. You need a fly reel. You need a pair of pliers, preferably with snippers. They make 4 sets that are really fancy for fly fishing, and I don't own a pair because I bought some cheap ones one time and they sucked. I like my Mondo pliers because I can literally do anything with these. Like fishing, flies. Got a little hockey puck full of some dries right here. We'll talk about those in a second. We got gink. This makes your flies float. Hey, been from huge fly fishing? Suck it. I don't use a shaker bottle. I throw my flies in the air and whip them back and forth like a man, and then I just apply more of this. But, good note, the shaker bottle, if your fly is wet, the shaker bottle will work better. However, I don't own one of those because I'm far too lazy to buy one. I just whip my flies around a lot, and then I apply gink once they're at least almost 90% dry, and then they will float again. For the most part, if it's too cold outside and they won't dry out, I just put them back in this box and grab another fly. And wait for that to dry out, and the next day I use probably the exact same fly again. So, got a big box of hoppers, every flavor in the rainbow. And we got our sinkers, which we don't like to fish as much, and we have our streamers. Streamers. These big fuzzy things down here, which work a lot like a jerkbait or a Rapala. And we got nymphs, which are just like jigs, literally, but they're baby jigs for trout. And a couple worms, which are literally the like little tubes that you used to play with when you were a kid, except now they're just more expensive and come with a little brass head on the top, or a little with a tin. I don't know what that is. I wonder what material that's. Probably lead. All that. Yeah, there's a huge variety to pick from with fly fishing. Trout like bugs and bait fish. So you got to trick them using this new technique that I'm learning slowly, day by day, on how to trick them. How to make them think that my lure is that particular bug that they're eating on the water, or it's that delicious grasshopper that will rail them in the face once they bite into it. So, here's my backstory. That's how I started fly fishing. Let's talk about my first rod. So, this is my first and only rod. It is my Orvis Clearwater setup. It is a 5 weight, 9 foot fly fishing rod, accompanied by an Orvis Clearwater fishing reel. It has I think a 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, how much is that? Let's say 10. I'd say 11 or 12 maybe. 12 drag system. I mean, look at that. I can barely pull that out. And if I back down by like 3, that's usually about where I sit when I pull my drag out. Good reel, good rod. I got a couple complaints about it, though. It has no freaking fly hook. See right here, there's usually a hook for your lure or whatever you're fishing to hook that on. So I end up hooking it on the cork, and my cork has been ripped off a couple times, just simply because the fly pulls out of the cork and then pulls the cork with it. So that does drive me a little bit insane. When I first bought this thing, this was much lighter. Okay, this cork had a lot more flavor to it. Now it's covered in my hand grease, trout slime, and river love. But yeah, this rod, for a starter rod, is a little more expensive, $350. But it comes with, the rod comes to Montana. Fantastic rod. I mean, it's brought in some hogs. Like I think my biggest trout probably was like 3 pounds, 4 pounds on this thing, at least. And it brought it in. I mean, the rod didn't break. Clearly, I'm still fishing with it, so it must still work. But yeah, I've used other fly rods, like the Walmart fly rod, Eagle Claw. Those are horrible. Those make fishing like an emotional battle, which is not what you want when you're trying to go fishing. You're trying to go out and have fun and catch fish and enjoy the water, not fight your fly rod like a UFC battle of tangles, twist, uncomfort, pulling out too much line. That's the other nice thing about having a drag system, is it controls your line feed rate when you're trying to feed line into your hand into casting. Because you whip the rod back, feed a little bit of line, push it forward, 10 and 2, back and forth, just for a basic cast in order to get that line out there. Actually, partially, I think one of the most fun parts about fly fishing is the casting part. Like at first it's really hard, and then once you start to like understand what's going on and you start to feel a fluidness and a smoothness to it, it's really neat. Like that you have all this line out in the air and you're able to pinpoint a trout with that line. I don't know, there's something just absolutely incredible about that. But yeah, also this is just your standard floating line for dry fly fishing. It works for everything though. I mean, yeah, if you're fishing a deeper river, you're probably gonna want like a nymphing line or something like that. I'm not too familiar with lines yet. I'm just getting into this. Been doing it for 3 months, so not an expert by any means, but I do know a little bit, and I know how to catch fish on a fly rod. I feel like that's the most important part, at least. So you got 3 categories of flies. You have dry flies, hoppers. Sorry, 4. Dry flies, hoppers, nymphs, and streamers. Your dry flies are going to be mostly your summertime. If a fish is hitting on top, and they're feeding on a hatch of some kind, let's say for example a caddis hatch, you're going to be fishing dry flies. If the hopper season comes along, they start baling hay and you got grasshoppers bouncing all over the banks, throw a hopper on. A hopper is anything that looks like a grasshopper. I mean, as you can tell, we're just done with summer because I have every single flavor of them, as I mentioned earlier. And then when that water starts to really suck, like if you got like a rainstorm or the water, it's super windy outside and just the water clarity is awful, that's when you start going to the streamers. I would say the streamers are these things in the bottom with lots of fluff. Like this is a, I don't know, crystal minnow, what do they call it? It's a whirly bugger, but it's in, sparkle minnow. That's what it's called. It's called a sparkle minnow. Not exactly the fanciest fly fishing. I can tell you all about Rapalas, but man, these streamers though, gotta pet them real good. Just make sure, also check your regulations, make sure if your hooks need to be barbless or if they need to be barbed, or if they can be barbed, I should say, they don't need to be barbed. It's actually much nicer if you're using barbless because it's so much easier to get a fish off the line, get them back in the water safely, especially if you're not planning on keeping that fish, which for 90% of fly fishermen, I feel like we don't keep our fish unless we want to treat that night. Yeah, fly fishing, it's just, there's just something about the finesse of it. There's these fish that are in like 1 or 2 feet of water. You can't run a jerkbait by them, that's not going to work. You're going to snag one, if anything, probably kill it. But you're tricking these fish into eating what they think is an actual fly. And that is so cool to me. Like actually seeing a bunch of fish pop in the top of the water and being able to actually convince them that the fly that is on the end of your line silently floating by them is exactly what they're eating, and then hooking into them, bringing them in. I don't know, there's just it's such an adrenaline rush. Like I can't really think of anything else I'd rather be doing in any moment. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel if you have, and thank you so much if you just did now. Hopefully I can put out some more great content in the future, and let me know if you want to see any more videos like this where I talk about stuff. If you have any ideas or recommendations, please let me know. Thank you as always, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Hit the sub button!
Yeah, they got a big one. Yes. And he's a freaking brown. Get in here. 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 No. I will handline you. Yes.